Why does your favorite music often feel flat? You got the best headphones, you turned up the volume until your ears ring, but it still feels like you're looking at a photograph of a song rather than standing inside it. It's a universal frustration, that wall between you and the emotion of the track. We've been conditioned to accept music as a two-dimensional experience, a left speaker, a right speaker, and a hollow center. But back in 1967, a group of art school dropouts decided that this stereo prism was a lie. I thought it was brilliant. As soon as we realized we could do it, we embraced it. On some of the first tapes, we had footsteps running around, wind noise, and so on. They discovered a secret way to rewrite the physics of a room, and it nearly broke them. You see, before the world knew them as gods of stadium rock, Pink Floyd was trapped in the same nightmare every other band faced, the front facing fail. In the mid 60s, live sound was a blunt instrument. It was a literal wall of speakers stacked at the front of the stage. If you were in the back of the hall, the music hit you like a muffled blanket. If you were in the front, it felt like an ice pick in the ear. There was no depth, no air, just a heavy, stagnant weight of the sound.
And Andy Bereza, who designed this desk, started off as AB Audio, and I've actually got a circuit diagram of his, I think, for an idea for a mixer from 1959, when he first started thinking about designing mixers.
Pink Floyd didn't want to play at you, they wanted to swallow you whole. But here's the thing about this, the technology to do that did not exist. Wasn't just unavailable, it was mathematically impossible with the gear of the era.
So when Pink Floyd started to mix stuff in quad, mainly the quad was used for routing effects. Richard Wright still have a little unit that he could pan his keyboards around with, the famous azimuth coordinator.
Rick Wright, the band's keyboardist, had a vision of a sound that could crawl across the ceiling and breathe down the neck of the person in the very last row. He wanted his organ notes to spin like a cyclone. The problem was the gear. The solution was a clunky, terrifying metal box that smelled of hot solder and ozone. They called it the azimuth coordinator. Now think about this. The first version was a total disaster. It was a primitive mess of four heavy faders. Imagine trying to play a complex psychedelic keyboard part with one hand while your other hand frantically slides four metal levers up and down to try and move the sound around the room. It was like trying to steer a sinking ship with a broken rudder. It was limp, it was thin, and it was a technical nightmare that threatened to ruin their live shows.
There was a Tascam 4-track reel-to-reel, or a TIAC it would have been back then, and that was fed up on four sliders into the quad section. That brought in various effects tapes, which could then be panned around the mid left and right and the front and back speakers. So things like helicopter sounds and stuff like that and keyboard sounds would be panned around the room.
They almost gave up. The against all odds moment came when an engineer named Bernard Spade stepped into the fray. I'm not sure if it was our idea or his idea, or quite how it happened, but I would have to think he was the one who suggested it, because I can't believe we'd have even thought about it. He ditched the academic approach and built a custom joystick, the first of its kind. But don't picture it as a slick modern gaming controller. This was a heavy industrial lever. When Rick Wright pushed that stick forward, the sound didn't just pan, it physically migrated. Imagine you're sitting in the Queen Elizabeth Hall in 1967. The air is thick, with the smell of damp wool coats and stale tobacco. Suddenly, a keyboard note tears away from the stage. It doesn't just get louder, it gains weight. It surfaced the balcony like a predator. People in the audience actually ducked. They were looking for hidden speakers, convinced there were ghosts in the rafters. It was impossible, well, partly because of volume, but in order to get the full effect, you would have to be central to the mixing station. But as players, we were always going to be more near the north speaker, really. They aren't watching a concert anymore, they were trapped inside a mathematical impossibility. But then came the nightmare of geometry. Sound is a slow, heavy beast. It travels at about 1100 feet per second. In a massive arena, that creates a physical lag. If you use the joystick to throw a sound to the back of a 200-foot stadium, it takes time to get there.
We did it on 4-track tape in order to have the sounds walking around the room.
If your timing is off by even a fraction of a second, the rhythm of the band and the spin of the audio collide.
And then the basic main band sound was just left and right of stage on these stacks. When this desk was out on the road with Alan Parsons, Alan Parsons said that all the roadies used to delight in turning all the controls back to zero.
The azimuth coordinator system might have been improved if we had simplified it by having 4 speakers around the hall instead of 6. I'm sure a lot of people couldn't differentiate between each speaker. They had to haul tons of extra speakers and miles of thick lead-heavy cables into every venue. The mixing desk was as temperamental as a vintage sports car. One wrong move, one humid night, and the entire illusion would just snap. Now, for the twist you aren't expecting. You'd think that this surround sound was designed to make the music more beautiful, right? That's wrong, because by the time they were touring Dark Side of the Moon, the azimuth coordinator was being used as a weapon of psychological warfare.
So I was hired to do Dark Side of the Moon from day one. The piece was being performed during the recording phase, and it was fun. I really had a good time, and they brought me to America.
Take the footsteps in On the Run. In isolation, those tracks actually sound thin and skeletal. They aren't lush recordings, but when panned through the joystick, they became a bully in the room. They chased the audience. If one speaker stack in the back blew out, which happened constantly, the audience would feel a sudden cold vacuum. The band wasn't just playing music, they were manipulating the oxygen in the room. The illegal secret of Pink Floyd's sound wasn't the box itself, it was the fact that they were fighting the room. They knew that for a sound to feel real, it had to have friction. It had to struggle against the acoustics of that concrete ball.
The phase linear amplifier, which you'll see in the racks here that are running the Kelsey Martin bins, there was a 400 version and a 700 version, and they were American amplifiers, which were brought in by the Floyd.
After that first legendary show, the original azimuth coordinator was actually stolen. The thieves thought they had the secret sauce, but they couldn't make it work. Why? Because they didn't have the internal map. They didn't understand that the sound wasn't in the lever. It was in the sweat of that man physically fighting that lever in a dark corner of a stadium, desperately trying to keep the dream from falling apart. The sounds travel around the hall in a sort of circle, giving the audience an eerie effect of being absolutely surrounded by this music.
But there was four quad pan pots on the desk. There was a Tascam 4-track reel-to-reel, or a TIAC it would have been back then, and that was fed up on 4 sliders into the quad section. That brought in various effects tapes.
We always knew the things they'd ask. The most popular question was, where's Sid? The second was, what does an azimuth coordinator do? So next time you put on your headphones, don't just listen to the notes. Look at the corners. Imagine the footsteps circling your head, not because of a digital plug-in, but because someone decided to go to war with physics over room. That geometry was impossible. They built it anyway.